Hello, everyone. My name is Ted Karsh, and today I'm going to be discussing our case study number 3, which is called Designing Learning Experiences for Middle School Science Teachers. So what I want to do first is actually meet our cast of characters, and the first person is Cynthia, and Cynthia is the person with a instructional design problem. She's come to us. She is a professor of science in a local university, and she has been distributing a curriculum of science instruction to middle schoolers throughout the state. It's becoming more popular, and there's the potential for it to spread around the rest of the United States. What is most important, in my opinion, about Cynthia for our purposes is the fact that her educational philosophy is constructivism, which says that learners construct knowledge rather than just taking in information. And they reflect upon experiences to build their own representations to incorporate new information into their pre-existing knowledge. Our next character is Denny. Denny is an instructional designer. Cynthia has come to Denny and she's asked for his help to design the curriculum for teachers who are teaching her curriculum. And Denny is an independent instructional designer. He worked for the Air Force previously as a technical designer and trainer. And he admits to being embroiled in the most difficult instructional design job he has ever had. He has also never heard of constructivism. So what I've done actually in this presentation is, because it was difficult and complex, I applied chapter 2 of our Dick and Carey textbook to this particular scenario, and it helped a lot. So that's how I'm approaching this design problem. And here's a little quote. The most critical event in the instructional design process is identifying the instructional goal. And that took me quite a while, but it was useful to use chapter 2, as I said. And I'm going to walk you through the process that I went through as I was trying to determine what the actual instructional goal was. So according to Dick and Carey, there are 4 primary approaches to identifying an instructional goal. The first one is subject matter expert approach. The second is content outline approach, administrative mandate approach, and the performance technology approach. So I tested each one of these approaches with the scenario that was presented in case study 3. And the first one I tried out was the subject matter expert approach. And I liked this initially because Cynthia is an expert in the subject matter, which is science. And the students obviously need to know what Cynthia knows. They need to learn it. And this particular method emphasizes the direct communication of the information from the director to the student. So it seemed like a good fit until I read more, and Cynthia said that she is not interested in doing any teaching or direct instruction because of her time constraints, and it conflicted with her constructivist ideology. So my verdict for the subject matter expert approach was a fail. The next approach I looked at was the content outline approach. And the benefits of this approach was that there's a clear need for instruction because Cynthia admitted that the teachers are assigned to teach science without much training or interest in the subject. So we have a whole pool of teachers who presumably need some kind of instruction. And however, the negatives to this approach were that the method is tied to the right type and amount of content. And Cynthia said she is not interested in teaching content at all. So the content outline approach, my verdict was a fail. The third approach was the administrative mandate approach. And the benefits of this were that as the program supervisor, Cynthia has identified a clear need for training teachers. However, the administrative mandate approach, I think, is found mostly in businesses and industry where someone from higher up, an executive, might say that our employees are not doing as well as they should be at this particular task. So I'm issuing a mandate that there should be instruction to reach these particular goals. And in this case, because of her constructivist philosophy and the fact that Cynthia is not interested in closely aligning her instruction to state standards, and she doesn't know how she exactly wants to package and deliver the instruction, it doesn't seem like a good fit. And my verdict for this approach was a fail. So the fourth and final approach was the performance technology approach. And the benefits of this were that there's no preconceived notion of what must be learned or what's going to be included in the instructional package. And this seemed to fit really well with everything I read about what Cynthia was looking for from her training or from her for her curriculum, because basically it seemed very open-ended, and there might not be any need for instruction at all. It's also very flexible. So I like this approach because it allowed for the flexibility to say that perhaps based on her inability to teach the content, that there might be other alternatives available to solve her problem, which wouldn't involve direct instruction. So the downside to the performance technology approach, I think, is that if you don't have an in-depth needs analysis, the educational package might not achieve the learning goals. So it requires, I think, and based on my experience with just this one case study, I think that's true because if you don't really understand the entire scope of the problem, then this approach might not be the best one. So it requires, I think, more research and analysis in the beginning. But for this, I didn't see any other alternative. So my verdict for the performance technology approach was a big win. And why did it win? There's many challenges here in this case, which can't be addressed by curriculum and instruction alone. And it also allows for non-training-based solutions. So let's take a look further to our next step, which is the performance analysis. And I borrowed this from Dr. Easterly, which is a condensed version of the Robinson questions. And I use this to approach the problems in our case today, which is, and simplified, the three questions are: what is the problem? Who cares? And how do we solve it? And this, I think, was very pertinent to this particular case study, this quote, and the real problem may be different than it initially appears. So for me, it certainly was. I read the case study 3 or 4 times before I started this, and then read it again. And initially, my first instinctual approach as a former classroom high school Spanish teacher was to start working on curriculum that's improved and better, and we'll see better results. But in reality, the curriculum was not the problem, and it was a waste of time to do that. So what was the problem, or what is the problem? And I found this flowchart to be very helpful, actually. So in this case, I looked at the question in the triangle or the diamond, and is there a performance problem that can be solved by instruction? And the answer in this case is yes and no. So yes, there are problems that can be solved by the instruction, and then no, there are also problems that will have to be solved by other means rather than instruction. So if I continued with my initial analysis without using this flow chart, I would have been solving a problem or solving one small problem out of many while ignoring possibly the most important problems. So that leads us to the performance analysis of our situation. And this is where we really break down the problems into two groups, which are non-instructional problems and instructional problems. So I think this really requires a careful analysis because some of the problems could be instructional and non-instructional at the same time. And you can't decide whether it's an instructional problem or a non-instructional problem until you've actually come up with a solution that's viable. So there's obviously more than one solution. Cynthia doesn't have so the non-instructional problems are that Cynthia doesn't have the time or the desire to conduct in-services or workshops for teachers. So that's more of a logistical problem as I see it. The instructional designer does not understand Cynthia's constructivist approach to teaching. That's a communication problem between the client and the instructional designer. Teachers need help in becoming good discussion facilitators. So this goes back to Cynthia's constructivist ideology and philosophy, which might allow for some constructivist teaching methodologies, but I put it under non-instructional because there could be solutions to this that are non-instructional, even though it seems like it's an instructional problem. We might, in the end, be able to come up with better solutions to making her teachers better discussion facilitators than just sending them a curriculum. So teachers lack the time and social support necessary to reflect on their practice. So no amount of teaching will solve that problem. So I put it under the non-instructional problems. Now, instructional problems are that teachers, they don't have experience or training for teaching science. So according to what Cynthia has told us, the teachers are revolving throughout their classrooms and they're not certified or trained to be science teachers. Then that seems like a problem that could be addressed by direct instruction. Cynthia is interested in developing the problem-solving process, not achieving learning outcomes in terms of content. So I think that's another area that could be addressed by some form of instruction. And Cynthia does not want to teach workshops. So the fact that she's talking about teaching workshops indicates that there is some need for instruction, and the format of her actually teaching the workshops is not working. So there could be another way to deliver the instruction without having her do workshops. Who cares? So here, I think this is probably the simplest part of our problems today. It's pretty easy to determine who cares. Cynthia cares. She's been doing this curriculum. She's been delivering curriculum and it's been successful. And she's very passionate about students and students developing their scientific thinking. The instructional designer, Denny, cares because he wants to deliver an effective product to his client. And the teachers who are teaching the middle school students, they care because they've been successful with the curriculum and they enjoy it and they're eager to learn more about improving its delivery in the classroom. So what that brought me to was a needs assessment. And I specifically looked at the training needs for teachers. So I used the equation from the Dick and Carey model, which gives you the need by determining what the desired status is and looking at the actual status. So here, and this was a little bit tricky because of the amount of information that we have on the case, but the desired status, the way I condensed it, was that teachers will know how to respond in ways that value their science students' ideas and provide opportunities for them to explicate their problem-solving strategies. So for Cynthia, that was her ideal learning objective. That was her vision for what she wanted to see from the results of training her teachers. So the equation really wasn't able to be solved because we don't know the exact actual status. So currently, I wrote currently unknown. However, I looked at the resources that are available. There's 24 teachers who completed workshops, and there's also video observations of teachers actually using the curriculum. So for me, I think what needs to happen to really determine the needs of the learners in this case is to examine the videos of the teachers teaching and come up with some kind of analysis of effectiveness, and then maybe even sitting down with Cynthia and looking for areas that need improvement based on the performance of the teachers. So using a simple formative assessment of the teachers as they're actually using it during their observations, I think would help us determine exactly what the needs are to come up with the training program and the curriculum. So this answers, I think, the instructional needs for the teachers, but the other problems that are existent in this particular case, I think, would also benefit from going through some kind of needs assessment such as this, which is probably, out of the scope of this video. But I think you could use the same kind of analysis by doing a needs assessment of what the desired status is and the actual minus the actual status to determine what the needs are. And there was a lot of discussion in the case study about a lack of communication between the professor, Cynthia, and Denny, the instructional designer. But I think that I think that a lot of those communication issues could be solved by these kinds of formative assessments and evaluations of what's already taken place, because you have a lot of data. You could look at these videos and determine a lot. And I think that Denny needs to do more needs assessments, more summative evaluations on the program to be able to have a more constructive conversation with his client. So my personal reflections after delving into this, I thought it was very difficult, actually. And some of the things I realized were that it's very easy to go into a situation and you try to apply right away techniques or abilities that you've utilized in the past to solve a problem that doesn't really exist. So, because that's might be the one solution you feel comfortable with. So I learned a lot by going back and applying and really concentrating on the initial approach to the problem. And that really helped me determine where the needs were. So I learned that it's important to approach the problem correctly from the beginning and make more mistakes approaching the problem and it will save a lot of time, I think, later. So in continuation of that, I think it's useful to circle back to the beginning and the middle of the problem as you're going along to make sure that you haven't veered too far off of course and that you're still addressing the learning needs of the population who you're trying to reach. And that being said, some further discussion questions for you all would be, how would you write the instructional goal for this situation to just to address the training needs of Cynthia's middle school teachers? And the second question would be, this instructional design case study is very complex. What are some strategies you could use to simplify the process for yourself and for your client, Cynthia? Thank you all, and I look forward to reading your discussions in the discussion chat box. Thanks. Bye.